Let's cultivate our motivation. And although there is no inherently existent I to be found, there still is a mere I that exists by being merely designated independence on the body and mind. And so it's that mere I that creates karma, is reborn, attains full awakening. It's that mere I that generates bodhicitta and wants to benefit all the sentient beings who are also empty of inherent existence and exist by being merely designated on the body and mind. So all of this is possible, all of this functions, although there is nothing findable when searched for. It all exists merely on the level of appearance. And so with that awareness, then we cultivate bodhicitta. So if sentient beings did exist inherently, then cultivating bodhicitta would be useless, because anything that is inherently existent exists independent of any other factors, so it cannot be influenced by causes and conditions. Yeah. If sentient beings cannot be influenced by causes and conditions because they have a fixed I, then why should we try and liberate them? Because it would be impossible. Similarly, if we had a fixed concrete me, we couldn't attain awakening either, because there would be some fixed, independent, self-enclosed me that cannot be influenced by anything else. So we could meditate all we want, and we wouldn't be influenced by the meditation, because we would be fixed, static. Okay? So all these things function because they lack inherent existence. It's not they function despite lacking inherent existence. They function because they are empty. If they weren't empty, they couldn't function. So think about it. Yeah, when we have that feeling of, here I am, big me. I'm like this, they've got to treat me like that. Yeah? Does that very static, concrete I feel like it's something that could be influenced by causes and conditions? No. It's just there. And you deal with it. Yeah. So, within our own mind, there's this contradiction going on of us, feeling like we're this permanent, static, independent thing, and yet also thinking that we can change. And those two things are contradictory. Okay. Another illustration of how ignorant we are. Yeah? And, I think it's important that we realize how ignorant we are. Because if we don't, then why stop the ignorance? Yeah? And if we don't stop the ignorance, we could just continue our samsara. Mm-hmm. So, in some way, I think there's a relief in saying, I'm ignorant. Yeah? Because that means if I know I'm ignorant, then I know I can gain wisdom and overcome it. If I don't know I'm ignorant, then, just continue the way I've been doing and get the same results I've been getting. Yeah? And so Jeffrey, when he, we have a class with Jeffrey who translated and edited this book, and he proposes sometimes just going through the day saying wrong, wrong, wrong. And it can be very helpful. Yeah. Not only on just thinking about who we are, but all of our judgments about ourselves, all of our opinions about other people, just when we notice that we're filling our minds with opinions and judgments, to say wrong, 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 and then put all that stuff down. And wouldn't life be a whole lot easier if we didn't have so many opinions and so many judgments about how we should be and how we shouldn't be and who other people are and how they should act? It would be easier, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would just be, there's sentient beings doing sentient being things. Yeah, they're full of ignorance, anger, and attachment. No use getting mad at them. No use expecting them to be other than they are. Recognizing their Buddha nature, knowing that they can change. But I'm not going to get wigged out by any of this. That would be a much easier attitude to go through life with, wouldn't it? Like I was saying yesterday, we could still discriminate between what's beneficial and what's not beneficial. But we wouldn't be judging the people. Yeah? We could still say, this policy works and that policy doesn't work, without calling the people who propose those policies idiots or other such names. Yeah? Okay? Because if people were inherently existent, they would always be what they are today. Okay? So that would mean every one of us came out of our mother's womb looking like we look today. What a tough pregnancy. Yeah. Really difficult for our moms. Mm-hmm. It would mean that when we went to first grade, we already knew what we know now. Yeah. It would mean that when we're 90 years old, if we make it that long, we'd still look the way we look now. Oh, that sounds okay. Except, do you really like the way you look now? It'd be nicer to look 20 years younger, wouldn't it? Yeah. Except for some of you, that puts you back in grade school. Yeah. So if we were inherently existent, everything would be fixed. So who created the karma today would be the exact same person after 14 lifetimes who experience the result. Yeah, without having changed one iota from now until we experience the result. Yeah. And in those 14 lifetimes, still looking like we look today. Yeah. Or, yeah, if we say that, who we were in this lifetime totally ceases and a completely new person arises in a future lifetime, then what we do today would not influence a future lifetime because this person is totally separate from the later person. In which case, we could also experience the karma created by other people because they would be equally separate and other from who we are in the later lifetime. Okay, so if there's no continuum and there's just two inherently existent people, one in this lifetime, one after 14 lifetimes, and remember, what this one did can't influence that one, because this one is impervious to influence by anything else, doesn't depend on anything else. Then since this one is totally other, then you are totally other also from the person in 14 lifetimes. So then I could experience the karma you create. Ridiculous. Yeah, then the whole thing falls apart. Okay, so this is, where using reasoning is very important, yeah, because we have these notions that are deeply embedded in our mind that we've never bothered to check if they're true or not. Yeah, and so we just bumble along in life. So Dharma practice, I think, really means that we have to look at everything we think and ask ourselves, is that correct? Yeah. Does it make sense? Or am I just, going along with these old unexamined assumptions? Which we spend a lot of time doing. Yeah. Not only, like I was saying at the beginning today, of, how we exist, but just who we are, notions we have of ourselves, maybe from previous lives that we just carried into this life, or notions we have of ourselves depending on conditioning early in this life. And then we just go through life, with our own little very narrow view of who we are and how we should relate to the world and how it should relate to us. Yeah. And so we're going through life like this. Meanwhile, life is like all like this. And we're like squeezing it in here. Yeah. So then we wind up quite miserable, and making other people pretty miserable too. Okay, so all these notions, I am smart, I am stupid. Yeah, I am somebody's son, I am somebody's daughter, I am somebody's mother, I'm somebody's father. Yeah, I'm a Republican. Oh God, I'm a Democrat. I'm an independent. I voted for so-and-so. I didn't vote. You know, all these identities that we then hold on to so strongly. Yeah, and expect people to treat us like that. And then, of course, looking at other people and superimposing their identities upon them. You know, and this is where prejudice comes from. Yeah, you look like this, therefore, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, based on how somebody looks. We know all about them. Complete projection on our part. Okay? And then, as we know, when we hold on to our prejudiced views, it creates a mess in society. Yeah. So to try and give these things up. Chapter 19, Viewing Yourself as Like an Illusion. So I realized when I looked at the book last night that I don't know where we'll finish, but it probably won't be exactly where I want it to be. Because I want it to be either we finish the whole book, so we start on something new next time, or we finish enough so that next year there's enough material for a whole course. But it looks like I'm going to finish somewhere in between those two. So we'll see what happens. Viewing yourself as like an illusion. So this starts with a quote by Guntang Rinpoche, who was a very famous Lama. I happened to meet his incarnation in Beijing many years ago. Very kind. Like a magician's illusions, dreams, and a moon reflected in water, all beings and their environments are empty of inherent existence. Though not solidly existent, all these appear like water bubbles coming forth in water. Okay, so we've all seen puddles of water with the moon reflected in it. Yeah. Is there a moon in the water? Are you sure? Are you sure? When you were a little kid, did you think there was a moon in the water? Yeah. When you watch TV and you see two people kissing or two people killing each other, yeah, one right after the other, it's good for ratings, you know? Do you respond as if they were real people? Do you have an emotional reaction? Yeah? Are there real people in that screen? Are there real people in that screen? No. But wow, look at how emotional we get watching that screen and all the pixels. Amazing pixel power. What it can do to our mind. Yeah? That's a good example of being deceived, isn't it? When we watch a movie or something on TV and we get emotional, either loving it or hating it, when there's no people in that TV. Yeah. So that's a false appearance, isn't it? All those people in the TV, that's a false appearance. There appears to be real people, but there aren't real people. But watching the TV still functions to give us information and to arise various emotions. So even though it's a false appearance, it still has some effect. Yeah. If we realized it was a false appearance, would we still get so emotional? Some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. If you actually understand it's a false appearance, that there's no people in that TV, are you still going to get so angry and want to throw a shoe at the TV? Yeah. Sometimes, don't you get really mad at the TV? You know, you take off your slipper. Oh, I want to hit that dog on top of the president's head. You know how the cartoons have him with a little fluffy dog? Yeah. There was a great cartoon of the Pope saying, "Oh, now I get to meet Trump. I'm going to ask him why he wears that funny hat." So, you know, are you still going to get mad at that TV if you realize there's no person there? Even you take a picture out. You know how we have our pictures in our scrapbooks. You take a picture out. Oh, there was my mother when she was a young woman. And you know how much emotion it brings up. This sentimentality, this nostalgia, this feeling of how unfair life is, that somebody so pretty like my mother, even though she was wearing the wrong fashions, could get old and look like she looks now. How unfair life is. It stirs up so much. Is your mother there in that photograph? Yeah. When you sit in meditation, yeah, and you think of what somebody did to you when you were a kid, how somebody made fun of you. Yeah. And there you are, second grade, and so is ridiculing you, making fun of you, calling you names. And you remember it, it's so vivid, and you get so angry. Yeah? Have you ever had that happen when you're meditating? Maybe not second grade, it could be something that happened last week. Is that person you're getting mad at there? Is anybody harming you? Look how deceived we are by false appearances. Yeah, totally deceived. Yeah, if you hear the bell and then you open your eyes and that person is not here, then, oh, yeah, You ever had that experience? You're so worked up in your meditation, and as soon as you hear this and open your eyes, oh, and it all vanishes. Yeah. How deceived we are by false appearance. We're pretty dumb, aren't we? Okay? So these things are false appearances, but those false appearances still function. In the same way, although things appear to be self-enclosed entities to us, while they are not, those appearances can still function. Yeah. While this thermos, still appears to have thermos inside of it, while it doesn't, there is absolutely no thermos in the space. Totally focus on that for a minute. There is no thermos in this thing. Yeah. And yet, this thing holds water. And yet, if somebody says, fill up the thermos, we know what to do. But there is nothing in here that is a thermos. Totally nothing. Yeah. His Holiness gets into this further on in this chapter about the snake and the rope. Yeah, such a good example. Okay. As a result of your having investigated the nature of the eye and other phenomena, you now know that they appear to exist inherently, but you understand that they are empty of inherent existence. Just as an illusion conjured up by a magician does not exist the way it seems. As Nagarjuna said in Precious Garland, a form seen from a distance is seen clearly by those nearby. If a mirage were water, why is water not seen by those nearby? Yeah, the closer you get to something, the more you should see it clearly. The more we investigate and analyze what something is, the more it should become clear to us if it really existed in that way. But when we get close to the mirage, do we see the water more clearly? No. When we analyze this person that we inherently existent person that we think we are, do we find it? No. Okay? So if you're really attached, if you're very thirsty, and you see that mirage in the distance, and you think there's water there, and you're just expecting water, and you can taste the water and how wonderful it's going to be. Imagine you get there, and there's no water. Yeah. It's like when you fall in love. Yeah. There's this opinion of this fantastic person, totally perfect. Yeah. And you're envisioning living happily ever after with them. And then the closer you get to them and the more you live with them, what happens? Yeah. You may still like them and care about them, but you realize they are not the person you thought they were when you first fell in love. True or not true? Yeah. It's true, isn't it? Yet we had this rigid view of who they were. Always going to be like that. Okay? The way this world is seen as real by those afar is not so seen by those nearby, for whom it is insubstantial, like a mirage. Yeah. Nagarjuna is fantastic. Yeah? These short verses are just, there's so much in them. A face in a mirror, like a person in a TV screen, appears to be a face, but this image is not a real face in any way. It is from all viewpoints empty of being a face. Yeah, there is no face in that mirror. Okay, but I very seldom watch movies. But somebody gave me the movie A Beautiful Mind. Yeah, many of you probably saw that. There was one scene where his wife, was trying to communicate with him, and he was totally out to lunch. And she went in the bathroom, and she was so frustrated that she smashed the mirror. I remember that scene because it was such a good example of somebody thinking it was a real face in the mirror. She was so mad at herself that she struck the mirror. Okay. She wasn't in the mirror. There was nobody in the mirror. Okay. Similarly, there's no truly existent people. Likewise, a magician can conjure up illusions that seem to be certain things, like a person in a box being skewered by a sword, but they are not at all established as those things. Yeah, there's one example they use a lot when refuting the Svatantrika view, and that's of a magician conjuring up horses and elephants at a magical show. So I don't know. Do they do things like this in India now, Ramesh? Have you ever seen anything like this? No. Apparently in ancient India they were able to do that. Yeah. And magicians would come along, and by saying a certain mantra or a certain spell or putting certain substances on stones and sticks could make them appear, or certain substances on people's eyes could make the stones and sticks appear like horses and elephants. And the audience would all go, "This elephant is charging towards me." But there was no elephant there. Yeah? But it appeared so real, just like the person in the TV. Yeah. I like the example of the person in the TV. Yeah, because to me that evokes much more than a face in the mirror. Yeah.
So not too long ago that a camera filmed a guy like this that did that. It was a little boy going up a rope, holding by itself, and everybody in the audience saw the little guy going up the rope, but the camera saw who was doing the mantra or whatever, and the little boy standing by him. He never moved. Both of them stayed there, but everybody else in the audience saw the little boy going up the rope.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so similarly, phenomena such as bodies appear to be established from the object's own side, but are empty of being established that way and always have been. So it's not that something existed inherently and then when you analyze it stops being inherently existent. It's always been that way. And when we're analyzing, we're just seeing what actually is. It is not that phenomena are illusions, Rather, they are like illusions. Even if a mirror image of your face is not really your face, the reflection is not utterly non-existent. Yeah, so the people on the TV screen are not real people, but there is an appearance there. Through its appearance, you can understand how your actual face looks. Similarly, although persons and things are empty of existing the way they appear to be established in their own right, they are not utterly non-existent. So when there's a reflection of a face in a mirror, it's not that there's nothing there. There is a reflection. There is not a face. When there's people, you're watching a movie, there's no real people there, but there is a screen with pixels in it. Okay? So these things are not utterly non-existent. They can act and they can be experienced. Therefore, being like an illusion is not the same as appearing to exist, but actually not existing, like the horns of a rabbit, which do not exist at all. Okay, so here he's differentiating the false appearance of a face in a mirror or a person in a screen, and saying there's no face, but there is a reflection and it functions. But that's different than the same as appearing to exist, but actually not existing. Like if you look over there and you see one of our bunnies and you think its ears are horns. Yeah, there's no rabbit with horns. It's totally non-existent. So in this, an inherently existent person is totally non-existent. A person who appears to exist inherently still exists. That's a false appearance. So we have to differentiate between those two. Okay? An inherently existent person totally does not exist anywhere. You just analyzed and you couldn't find it. There is no inherently existent person. But a dependently existent person that appears to exist inherently does exist. And that person is the person who's sitting in this room, creating karma, going towards enlightenment, and so forth. Okay? So the reflection here. Remember a time when you mistook a reflection of a person in a mirror for an actual person. Okay? 2, it appeared to be a person, but was not. Similarly, all persons and things seem to exist from their own side without depending on causes and conditions, on their parts, or on thought. But they do not exist that way. In this way, persons and things are like illusions. Yeah, illusions have a false appearance. Yeah, so they're like illusions. Okay, then identifying the conflict between appearance and reality. This is the real war we should be fighting. I use the examples of illusions, reflections, and mirages in order to provide a rough idea of the conflict between what something appears to be and what it is. Realization that the reflection of a face in the mirror is not a face, does not constitute realization of the emptiness of inherent existence of a mirror image. For even with this knowledge, you still mistake the nature of a mirror image as an inherently existent. Okay? So what he's getting at here is the example of a face in the mirror is just an example of false appearance, yet still functioning. So realizing that level of falsity is not the same as realizing the level of falsity when we see that no persons or phenomena exist inherently. Okay? In other words, there's two different levels of falsity. One that we can recognize as ordinary beings. There's no face in the mirror. Yeah. Another one that as ordinary beings we can't clearly recognize unless we analyze, and that is the appearance, thinking things are inherently exist as they appear to be. So two different levels of falsity. Mm-hmm. So when the baby, you see a baby trying to play with the baby in the mirror, when that baby figures out it's not a baby in the mirror, that doesn't mean that the baby's realized emptiness. Okay? They've just realized a superficial level of falsity that's used as an example. If knowing that a mirror image of a face is empty of being a face constituted true realization of emptiness, then as soon as you turned your mind to any other object, your body, your arm, your dwelling, you would also realize its emptiness of inherent existence. Oh, if it were only that easy. Yeah. But this is not the case. Again, it is not that you and others are illusions, rather you are like illusions. To view yourself or other phenomena as like illusions requires two things. Okay? First one, the false appearance of objects as inherently existent. And two, an understanding that you or whatever you are considering does not exist in that way. So you have to have something that appears falsely plus our mind that understands it does not exist the way it appears. So you have to have both those elements to understand a false appearance. So in terms of the false appearance of inherent existence, there's some object that appears inherently existent, like yourself. Yeah, me. But there's also another mind that has already analyzed and knows, that doesn't really exist that way. Okay, so you need those two elements to see things as like illusions. Because of your experience in meditation of searching for and not finding this independent quality, although after meditation phenomena still appear to exist inherently, the power of your previous understanding opens the way for you to recognize that these phenomena are illusory, in that, although they appear to exist inherently, they do not. As the Buddha said, all things have the attribute of falsity, deceptiveness. Okay? So in order to see things like illusions, we have to have done some analysis beforehand and understood that things are empty of inherent existence. Then when we see things in post-meditation time that still appear inherently existent, we will understand that that appearance is false. that they're like illusions. And then we won't get so, emotionally wrapped up in all of these things. Yeah. Just as when you realize there's no people in the TV, yeah, then you can, not get so emotional about it. But why do we still get emotional? Because we slip back into thinking that there's real people in that TV. If we really hold the notion there's no people in that TV, that emotion is not going to come like that. It's kind of like if you have a little stuffed animal that you wind up and it, the stuffed puppy sits up and it barks and it's so cute. Yeah. If you think that's a real puppy, yeah, as long as you think that's a real puppy, you're going to get really enthralled with it. Yeah. The moment you realize it's not a real puppy, then you can say it's a cute stuffed animal, but you're not going to be all enthralled, and want to post on Facebook about, look what this puppy does. Okay? There are many discrepancies between the way things appear and the way they really are. Something that is impermanent can appear to be permanent. Okay? That's a false appearance, but that's not the appearance of inherent existence. Also, sources of pain, such as overeating, sometimes appear to be sources of pleasure, but in the end they are not. Okay, we all know that one. What will eventually lead to suffering is not seen for what it really is, but is mistaken for a way to happiness. Although we want happiness out of ignorance, we do not know how to achieve it. Although we do not want pain because we misunderstand what causes pain, we work at achieving the very causes of pain. So what's he talking about there when he says there's discrepancies? That something is impermanent but appears permanent, something appears to be pleasurable but it's the source of pain. He's talking about the four distortions, isn't he? Yeah, something appears to be pure, it's not, it's foul. Something appears to be inherently existent, it isn't. So many kinds of false appearances. Okay, and because we don't see these things as false appearances, even the very gross false appearances, then we continually wind up creating more and more causes of suffering. Yeah. And the one about impermanence, yeah, I mean, all four of these distortions are quite powerful, but especially the one about impermanence, that we often think that things that are transient by nature, that don't exist in the same way in the very next moment, we often think that they're permanent and static and not change. And that misunderstanding, although even intellectually we know they change moment by moment, still the fact that we don't really in our core believe that means that we often expect things to continue to be the way they are. And when there's a big change, we freak out. Yeah? We've all experienced the death of people we care about. On the day they die, we know they may have been our grandparents. We've known for a long time that they've been sick and that they're nearing death. But the day they die, we're surprised. Yeah, we're surprised. They weren't supposed to die today. We're still seeing them as having some permanent nature, of always being there. And so we're surprised. Yeah. When you have some thing that you really cherish a lot, maybe a family heirloom. Actually, so many family heirlooms. Anyway, I won't go into family heirlooms. But maybe you treasure a family heirloom. Or you treasure some beautiful thing somebody gave you. Yeah. And then it falls and it drops. Oh no! This thing that's been in the family since they came over on the Mayflower is destroyed. It was supposed to last forever. I was supposed to be able to give it to my kids and their kids and their kids and their kids, and it's gone. It was, you know how shocked we are when things happen. Just even in the course of a day, we have a plan of how the day's going to go, and it never goes that way. And we get aggravated. I had my whole list of what I was going to do today, and 5 minutes after starting to do the first thing, something else came up, and I didn't get anywhere else. And we're so upset. Why in the world did we expect to complete everything on our list to start with? Yeah? What a crazy expectation. Okay? Because we're thinking things are permanent. We're thinking that once we have a plan, that is what is going to happen. Forget it. Yeah. Just forget it. The eyes of those attending a magic show are affected by the magician's tricks, and through this deception the audience thinks it sees horses and elephants and so forth. In a similar way, by going along with the appearance of inherent existence, we exaggerate the status of good and bad phenomena, and are thereby led into desire and hatred, and actions accumulating karma. What is not an inherently existent I appears to be an inherently existent I, and we accept the appearance as given. We don't question it. So, however everything else appears to us, that's it. Yeah. There's some people. Do you have somebody in your life that the moment you think about them, you get this feeling of, ugh? There's somebody? Yeah? The moment you think of them, ugh. Somebody else in your life, the moment you think of them, Okay? We think that they're inherently existent people. Yeah? And then we respond accordingly. Yeah? So the person that, you just see who you go, ugh, even they come in and say, good morning, you go, ugh. And the person that you think is just wonderful, yeah, so wonderful, they come in and say, good morning. And you still think they're wonderful. At least for a while. Okay. So how seeing this way helps? Seeing people and things as existing like illusions helps reduce unfavorable emotions, because lust, hatred, and so forth stem from our superimposing qualities, good or bad, on phenomena beyond what they actually have. For instance, when we get very angry at someone, we have a strong sense of the wretchedness of that person. When we're angry, that person is 100% wrong, bad, cruel, does not deserve to be on this planet. Right? But later, when we calm down and look at that same person, we may find our earlier perception laughable. That's if we're a little bit flexible. When we're deeply entrenched in our emotions, then every time we think of them, it's yeah. The benefit of insight is that it prevents us from attributing to objects a goodness or badness beyond what is actually there. This undermining of self-deception makes it possible to reduce and eventually end lust and hatred, since these emotions are built on exaggerations. This elimination of unhealthy emotions, in turn, leaves more room for healthy emotions and virtues to develop. By viewing phenomena with insight, you bring them within the scope of the practice of emptiness. Now, sometimes we have a little debate, because His Holiness says, okay, where was it? Okay, from attributing to objects a goodness or badness beyond what is actually there. So when we hear that, we think, but there is some goodness or badness there. I'm just exaggerating the goodness or badness. I'm going to bring up an example that nobody's going to like. When you get really turned on looking at somebody, okay, we see their body as 100% fantastic, pure, desirable, everything's in it. We want to touch that body. Okay? Now, is that an exaggeration? Yeah. At that moment, you don't think it is, do you? You think it's really that way. Okay? When you look at it different, yeah, and you peel away the person's skin, you unzip them and open up what's in there. Is there anything pure in there? Anything that is desirable that you really want to get your hands on? You know, maybe their liver. Yeah. Their intestines. Yeah. When you look, it's 100% foul, isn't it? Not just, actually there's a little bit of purity, but we're exaggerating the purity. Yeah. But you really have to look carefully because, but wait a minute, their eyes, their eyes aren't foul, aren't yucky. They have beautiful eyes. Then you take their eyeballs out. You put them there. And mentally you cut their eyeball in half. Yeah, what do you think? Still beautiful eyes? See, I told you none of us would like this example. But it's true, isn't it? It's such a good example because it's true. Yeah. Similarly, it's not that things are actually, they're a little bit permanent, and we're exaggerating the level of permanence. There is no permanence there to start with. Yeah. So, quite interesting. I wonder if His Holiness says it like that to kind of pad the shock for us, you know? Okay. When you practice expanding love and compassion, keep in mind that love and compassion themselves and the persons who are their objects are like a magical illusion, in that they appear to exist solidly in and of themselves, but do not. If you see them as inherently existent, this view will keep you from fully developing love and compassion. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Why is that? Because when we see them as inherently existent, then we very easily go into they are inherently wonderful and we get attached to them, or they are inherently terrible and we want to get rid of them. Yeah? So those two, going to those two extremes of attachment and aversion, prevents us from actually caring about the person. Doesn't it? Yeah? Because when we see them with attachment, we're all like this. And then when the attachment goes away, then it seems like the affection also disappears. And that's because we never really connected with them as simply a sentient being who wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. Okay? So maybe what His Holiness says, beyond the goodness and badness that are actually there, maybe what he's referring to is there's no good or badness in the person themselves, but there is the quality of them being a sentient being who wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. And that doesn't get destroyed by seeing them as empty of inherent existence. In fact, the more we see them as empty of inherent existence, the stronger our compassion for them becomes, because we see that they suffer so much because they grasp at things as truly existent when things don't exist that way at all. So all their suffering is actually built on a false foundation. Yeah, so that makes our compassion especially strong. Yeah, because it's like, it's like when you see a baby, if we go back to the example of that little wind-up puppy, and the baby is so attached to that wind-up puppy, yeah, who then actually, accidentally falls in the swimming pool and gets broken, and the baby's distraught. What happened to my puppy? Yeah. And you have so much compassion for that kid because you realize there was no real puppy there. They were attached to something that is not worth being attached to. And because of that, they suffer so much when their little puppy isn't there. Yeah. But it wasn't a real puppy to start with. Yeah. So in a similar way, when we see how much sentient beings suffer because of their own attachment and their anger, that is dependent on their grasping at true existence, then we see all that suffering is totally unnecessary. And that really makes our compassion strong. It's like things don't really need to be this way. There is a way out. Yeah, If you see them as inherently existent, this view will keep you from fully developing love and compassion. Instead, view them as like illusions, existing one way but appearing another. This perspective will deepen both your insight into emptiness and the healthy emotions of love and compassion, so that within such understanding you can engage in effective, compassionate activity. Okay, let's go through. Then there's a meditative reflection that's similar to the one that we did yesterday morning. Okay? As you did earlier, bring the target of your reasoning, the inherently established I, to mind by remembering or imagining an instance when you strongly believed it. Notice the ignorance that superimposes inherent existence and identify it. Put particular emphasis on contemplating the fact that if such inherent establishment exists, the I and mind-body complex would have to be either exactly the same or totally different. Then forcefully contemplate the absurdity of assertions of the self and body-mind as either the same or different, seeing and feeling the impossibility of these assertions. So, the problems of seeing them as one. I and the mind-body would have to be utterly and in all ways one and the same thing. In that case, asserting an I would be pointless, because they would be the same thing. It would also be impossible to think of my body or my head or my mind, because saying mine separates, there's me and then there's the possessions. When mind and body no longer exist, the self would also not exist, like when we've died. Since body and mind are plural, there's two things. If the self was one with them, then there would have to be two selves. Or, since the I is just one thing, the mind and body would just have to be one thing. They couldn't be two things. Just as the mind and body are produced and disintegrate, so would have to be asserted that the I is inherently produced and inherently disintegrates. So this is what I was talking about earlier. If we were the same person in this life and then 14 lives later, okay, so in that case, either the pleasurable effects of virtuous actions nor the painful effects of non-virtuous actions would bear fruit for us, because we would be exactly the same person, or we would be so inherently different, because this was one inherently existent person and that would be an inherently existent person, that we wouldn't experience the results of our own karma. And we could experience the results of the karma created by somebody else who is equally inherently different than us. Okay? Or we would be experiencing the effects of actions we ourselves did not commit. Okay, then the difference. Here are the problems with things being different. I and mind body would have to be completely separate. In that case, the I would have to be findable after clearing away the body and mind. You take away body and mind, and children would still be sitting here. Okay? The I would not have the characteristics of production, abiding, and disintegration, which is absurd, because if the I were separate from the body and mind, when the body disintegrates and dies, we couldn't say the person died, because they're totally separate. The I would absurdly have to be just a figment of the imagination, or permanent, but we aren't figments of the imagination. We are dependent on conceptuality, but we're not total figments of the imagination. We're not rabbit's horns. Absurdly, the eye would not have any physical or mental characteristics because it would not be related to the body and the mind, and the body and the mind would have physical and mental characteristics. Okay? Then, not finding such an eye, after you've examined oneness and difference, firmly decide neither I nor any other person is inherently existent. Remain for a while absorbing the meaning of emptiness, concentrating on the absence of inherent existence. Then, once again, let the appearances of people dawn to your mind. Okay. Reflect on the fact that within the context of dependent arising, people also engage in actions and thus accumulate karma and experience the effects of those actions. So people do exist dependently, and because they exist dependently, they do things and they experience the results of what they do. Ascertain the fact that the appearance of people is, here he uses the word effective. Effective and feasible within the absence of inherent existence. When he says effective, what he means is that these things perform functions. They can produce effects. Okay? So that the appearance of people, can produce effects. And, all these people are appearing and they're doing things and creating karma and experiencing the results. So all of that functions and it's feasible, even though they're not inherently existent, even within their absence of inherent existence. Okay? When the ability to perform a function and emptiness seem to be contradictory, that means that we've usually gone a little bit to nihilism and we think that emptiness means things don't exist. So if you find that that's kind of happening, then use the example of a mirror image. The image of a face is undeniably produced in dependence on a face and a mirror, even though it is empty of the eyes, ears, and so forth it appears to have, and the image of the face undeniably disappears when either face or mirror is absent. So that image of the face, is false, but it does arise due to causes and conditions, and it disappears due to causes and conditions, even though there's no real face there. Okay. Similarly, although a person does not have even a speck of inherent existence, it is not contradictory for a person to perform actions, accumulate karma, experience effects, and be born in dependence on karma and destructive or afflictive emotions. Then try to view the lack of contradiction between functioning and being functional and emptiness with respect to all people and things. So try and see that things can be empty and yet still function and produce effects. And try and see those two things as not contradictory.
You did bring it in about the mind, how the mind understands, has to realize what's truly going on. But that was part of the question. And then also I was thinking about how in our mind we visualize, like when we're asked to visualize the Buddha and his beautiful face. Mm-hmm. And then when we open our eyes, we know there's not a Buddha there in the air. And so how does that relate to
Okay.
what is holiness is telling us?
Yeah, okay. It relates in the sense that just as the face of the mirror can function to produce a result, even though there's no face there, when we visualize the Buddha, yeah, that mental state can function to produce a feeling of happiness, or of closeness to the Buddha, even though there's not a real Buddha sitting there. Okay? The thing is that apparently, if you meditate like this over a period of time, at some point when your meditation gets really deep, there can be an actual vision of the Buddha. Yeah. It wouldn't be like the Buddha would appear to your mind and go, "Hi, Claire. You've been visualizing me for a long time. I'm here now." Yeah. But somehow, by the power of the mind, we could make the Buddha's form body appear to our mental consciousness. Don't ask me how that happens.
Thank you.
I have kind of two questions on both ends of the spectrum. And the first is just wanting to get clear on the kind of basis of samsara around when you talk about our perception of things as inherently existing. The way that I understand it is that by perceiving myself as solid, it gives me something to cling to that isn't actually there, right? And that by seeing others as separate and solid, it gives me something to be averse to or to be attached to, right? And that's the kind of basic delusion that allows all of the suffering to be created and maintained. Is that kind of the basic understanding?
That's it.
And so then when I flip to the other end and think about if I didn't have that delusional view, what would I see instead? So I'm thinking about it from the perspective of, we've walked down this long path and have the direct experience of emptiness and then get to the point where we're able to function in conventional reality while maintaining this perception of emptiness. And what I wonder about if what we're seeing then in conventional reality is kind of, have you seen the movie The Matrix? Okay. There's this point in The Matrix where, he lives, it's this delusional world that is, digitally created and you navigate it, it looks real, but then this guy in The Matrix figures out that it's not and can actually see all the X's and O's that the whole digital world is based on and can then manipulate the digital world and see how it actually is. Okay. And so he goes in and out of that conventional reality from seeing things like it looks like now to seeing all these X's and O's in digital manifesting so that he can manipulate the so it gives him superpowers, right? And so, or the ability to really act in extraordinary ways within this context of the environment. And so I just wonder then, when you're able to hold both together, are you then seeing both the subtle impermanence and interdependence of all things so they actually do appear more like illusions and fluid? So like I would see you breathing in and out, your cells moving around, the interconnection between, is there something more like that gets beyond the solidness? And so how are we, what's the alternative to this delusional view?
Okay.
Right?
How are we going to see things?
And is like subtle, is imagining that impermanence one of the ways of helping to loosen the solidness of being like, oh yeah, Venerable is a different person than she was 30 seconds ago, right? Like all of her cells are in different places and she just breathed in and out a whole lot and whatever.
Yeah.
Is that Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
Well, thinking
elaborate?
like that would certainly start to change our, even now, even we haven't realized emptiness or impermanence. Just even trying to think like that would definitely change our feeling about how somebody is. They say that after you've realized emptiness directly, things still appear truly existent, but you know it's false because you have like the hangover from having meditated on emptiness. That still affects your mind. Now, it seems to me that depending upon how familiar you were with emptiness and how deep your understanding was, and uh, the amount of obscurations that you have already ceased in your mind as you go through the paths and stages, that would affect exactly. It would affect to what extent it appeared like an illusion. In other words, I'm thinking it's not just on and off. Oh, it looks like an illusion or it doesn't. But there's probably a whole lot of gradations depending upon the depth of your understanding to emptiness, the amount that you've already purified your mind of afflictions, and so on. Okay? So at that time, that person is still a sentient being. Yeah, they're walking around. There's still the appearance of true existence. They know it's false. Yeah, they have an awareness. They aren't directly perceiving emptiness, but they have an awareness that things do not exist inherently. Okay. And then probably, if they've realized impermanence, they have that awareness too. There's no permanent person there. There's no, thing that's going to be pleasurable, that's going to overcome my dukkha outside of myself. So that person must have some understanding of that. But only a Buddha can see the appearances and the emptiness directly at the same time. Yeah. Everybody else, one influences the other, but seeing it directly has to go back and forth. It has to alternate. But for a Buddha, they're both seen at the same time. Yeah. Now, what a Buddha sees?
That's a real question.
Tell me when you become a Buddha, okay? Because I have that same question. Yeah. It seems to me they must see, things as dependent arising. Now, what is seeing things as dependent arising? What would that look like? Well, you certainly wouldn't see one solid thing there, would you? Yeah, because if you thought there was one solid thing, then you wouldn't have realized dependent arising. Yeah, so they must see something else besides one solid thing. So maybe that's why they say that a Buddha perceives all the past, present, and future simultaneously, because they can see all these causes and effects. Maybe.
And I have one easier question or
clarification.
Thank you. So in the contemplation, it talks about imagining your inherently existing self as separate from your body and mind, and how then you would be able to experience.
Or just imagining your regular self. Do you exist as separate from your body and mind?
Right. And then the exercise, they say, if you were if it was separate and inherently existing, you could experience the karma from other lives or from other people or other lives.
Right.
And the one cognitive thing that I kept getting hung up on, and I might just be taking it out of context, is my understanding of inherently existing things is they can't actually produce causes and effects.
Right.
So they can't actually experience them. And so I was like, well, if they're inherently existing, they can't actually experience anything. So
exactly.
So is it just like a use for breaking that up a little bit, or can you explain why they even say that?
Why they even say that? Because somebody may hang on to, and many people do, oh, it's inherently existent, but it's still dependent. Yeah, because remember, only the Prasangikas say that things are empty and dependent. Everybody else says, oh, yeah, they're dependent and they function and they're inherently existent. So if you're still hanging on to that view, then it forces that person to say, just like you said, but wait a minute, that's not going to work.
Thank you.
Okay, last question.
Just in terms of actually seeing dependent arising, what that looks like. I've read books by Thich Nhat Hanh, and he says when he looks at a leaf, he can see the rain, he can see the sunshine, he can see the seed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how metaphorical he's being, but he has a very plain kind of style, and it seems, I imagine that he can actually see these things. It's just the only description I've ever come across of someone saying that they see it.
Yeah, no, I don't think that he actually sees the sun, and there's some sun rays going on in this leaf, and because whatever sun rays there were in the leaf are gone now. So it's not that he's not seeing those things with his eyes. When he says he's realizing that something has a dependent nature that depends on all those things.
But like maybe time has collapsed and he can see,
Ask Thich Nhat Hanh what he sees. Don't ask me what Thich Nhat Hanh sees.
Yeah, I'm just saying
Okay.
it's a description.
I cannot answer for somebody else. That's his description. Yeah. What it actually means, I gave you my idea. If that's not satisfactory, write him a letter. Write his disciples a letter and say, what does he really mean by this? Is it true that when he actually sees with his eyes a cloud in that leaf?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, right, and ask, And can he pull that cloud out of that leaf? Mm-hmm. Okay?
So my question is about impermanence and experiencing, seeing impermanence. I know that's one sort of way to get at emptiness. And one thing that I do when I meditate is I just ground myself in the moment and notice how everything is changing. Nothing stays the same for even 1 second.
Mm-hmm. And that then really, how can you ground yourself in the moment if everything's changing?
Well, there's an awareness of the change.
Where's the moment that you're grounded in?
The present.
But it doesn't exist the next moment.
Right. So that's kind of getting...
So where is it right now?
Right. So that seems to be a very good way of getting at emptiness, right? I mean...
It gets you, it gives you more an idea of impermanence. Yeah. It's an aid, I think it can lead, help you get at emptiness, but you still have to,
my question is how does that function? I mean, is meditating on impermanence useful in terms of getting at emptiness?
Well, yeah, because meditating on impermanence is easier than meditating on emptiness.
So one can sort of deduce that because things appear and then disappear almost simultaneously, then how can they really have essence and have essence?
Yeah, but some people still can make them have some essence. Yeah, like I was saying to him, yes, they appear and disappear, at the same moment, but there's still something there that goes from one moment to the next moment. There's still some people that hang on to that idea. Because if there wasn't something that went from this moment to that moment, then you could have, a piece of green here and the next moment a piece of red. There must be something that goes from one moment to the next. Yeah, it's very easy to think like that, isn't it? Yeah. It's also easy to think, well, if it's really impermanent, how can there be anything that goes from one moment to the next? But then our mind, we like permanence, There's got to be really something. Otherwise, it could be a window shade in this moment and, a car in the next moment. There's got to be something that goes from one moment to the next. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see, our understandings morph. They aren't real stable understandings, are they? Because just we even hear another way of looking at it, we go, yeah, that really makes sense. Yeah. There's really got to be something in here that goes to the next moment. And if there is, then of course there's something that is really permanent. Yeah. Overall, everything is impermanent, but there's some little bit in there that's permanent. Yeah. Like when you think of yourself. Yeah. Am I an entirely different person from when I was 5 years old? Well, yes, everything's changed about me, but there's something that went from that 5-year-old to who I am now, because if there weren't something that did that, then there wouldn't be a continuum. But then you go, but if there were something that's fixed, that went from one moment to the next, then how could I change it all? Okay. Then you get really tangled up. That's good. Because it makes you really think what is going on, what is possible. It makes you look deeper. Okay. That's why they have us, study some of the lower tenet systems, because those notions are lurking in our minds. Yeah? And yeah, we can talk emptiness, blah, blah, blah. But then you just give one of those arguments from one of the other tenet systems, and yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really true. So, that's why we have to keep looking deeper, looking deeper.